Welcome to Long Brothers Reviews, the show where sibling rivalry meets the cinema as two brothers rate and debate movies past, present, and coming soon. I'm Todd, and this week's episode is sponsored by Bridgestone Tires. Next time you go shopping for tires, this is a brand they might mention, Bridgestone Tires.
And I'm Mike, and this week's film is San Andreas, starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Carla Gugino, and Alexandra Daddario, directed by Brad Peyton. And no, we don't know who those people are either.
Nah. This week's order was decided by a system similar to that used in Shirley Jackson's The Lottery. So, Mike, you're up first.
San Andreas is less a story than a series of set pieces to show what it would look like if the West Coast were hit by a massive earthquake and collapsed into rubble. The story, as it is The Rock flying from crisis to crisis as he races up the coast to save his daughter in San Francisco, which is a pretty good idea whether there's an earthquake or not. The effects are fantastic and non-stop, and if you're old enough to remember 1970s disaster movies, especially 1974's Earthquake, you may recall seeing those pictures and wondering if that's as good as it gets. Well, San Andreas is what you hoped for all those years ago. It's all action, all the time. The effects are as real as it gets, and a great time at the movie comes to anybody who shows up. It's the kind of thing that reminded me of a similar picture, Independence Day from 1996. Go see San Andreas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you on this one, and in fact, I was thinking a lot of the same things while watching it, specifically about that epidemic of big budget for the time disaster movies that we saw in the 70s. They all followed kind of the same formula. You had a major disaster that was either imminent or it was in progress, and you had the hero of the film, who was usually, more often than not, a first responder of some sort, who found himself having to save not only the general public, but also like his estranged wife and ultimately his family. You had the Towering Inferno, Earthquake, what you mentioned, Airport. San Andreas follows that same basic formula right down to the slimy businessman / land developer that's in there somewhere. But the big difference between this film and those that preceded it is obviously 40 years of advances in special effects that let the director take this disaster statewide with amazing realism and let him come up with even more clever ways to kill off random bystanders. It's fun. The effects are fantastic. And The Rock is probably one of the most believable and, most importantly, likable action stars to come around in a long, long time. I say go see this movie. You're going to have a good time.
I think we're totally together on this. I had such a good time at this movie. It just flies by. It's the right length. It avoids all the stuff that people hated about the old disaster pictures, which was the long dialogue passages and the romance underneath it. And no, these are just little breathers to get us between the action sequences. It's a great picture.
We should mention, of course, Paul Giamatti is in this, and he plays the seismologist who has developed a way to predict earthquakes. Unfortunately, he develops about 5 minutes before the big earthquake hits, so it doesn't do a lot of good. But he's good in this as well in what is arguably a very minor role, but it's always fun to see him.
You know, Paul Giamatti's predictor of earthquakes in this picture is a lot like the guy who points at the ocean and sees a tidal wave out there, and he goes, "There's going to be a tidal wave." That's basically his method.
Yeah, they discovered that magnetic pulses in the Earth spike right before the earthquake. But the problem is, it literally is right before the earthquake.
Yes,
so it's not like they can say. By the time he gets the warning out, everybody's shaking. So
yeah. He's the guy who says, "Here's our early warning system. When the ground begins to shake everywhere."
Dwayne Johnson plays like the captain of a rescue unit, and they fly around, they rescue people that have, and for whatever reason, only a helicopter can rescue them. The worst natural disaster to ever hit the Western Hemisphere has just happened. He decides he's going to fly the thing up to San Francisco. He's based out of L.A. and save his daughter. He doesn't bother to get on the radio and say, hey, boss, I'm taking this $1 million chopper halfway up the state. And nobody even bothers to be looking for him. He left without his crew. It's just him and his crew of 3 other guys we see at the beginning of the movie. We never see them again. And, there's no where's The Rock? Anybody seen The Rock? And that chopper, we need that chopper. Nobody seems to mind that he took off in the middle of this disaster.
He's flying to San Francisco. He gets there. Yeah. He's looking for his daughter. And he flies past a window. How many buildings are in San Francisco? 100,000 buildings. He flies past this one building, this one floor, and there's his daughter inside the window. You know, I can lose my kid at the strip mall and be there for 4 hours. And this guy she's at the Embarcadero. We'll go there. Really?
Yeah, that was when they were in the boat after the big tsunami.
There's days I can't find the dog in the living room, okay? I know he's in bed here with me somewhere. What is it? But The Rock, he's like your freaking compass. I just got back, as you know, from Pitch Fest in Los Angeles, meeting a bunch of producers and talent agents. Very exciting. And it reminded me of how much mechanical effort goes into planning the elements of a story. And this thing about here it looks like it's going to be tragedy and then it's avoided. Tragedy avoided. That is one of the key feelings you go to the movies to have. You want to see something that's, it's a threat. Oh, you're surprised by the avoidance of it. The thing that gives us pleasure when we hear a story is the surprise of the unexpected. And setting up for a certain disaster, familiar disaster that's avoided is one of the things we love. And the opening of this film is a textbook example of how that should be executed. It's very smart that way.
I think whoever the casting people were on this, they needed someone to play The Rock's estranged wife, and they needed someone to play his college-age daughter. And I think they just sent out a memo to all the casting agents and said, it's going to be a movie with a lot of shaking in it. Send us your actresses' measurements, because that really seemed to be all they were interested in with the two female leads in this film. I think it's interesting too that he was able to fly this thing. Not only does he flies this thing from LA to California, and it's kind of like we were talking about when we talked about the Mad Max movie. Nobody seems to worry about running out of fuel.
Yeah,
and he's flying this thing all over the place, and he never even thinks to look at the gas gauge.
You've seen these feature pieces about a real earthquake scientist says what's wrong with San Andreas. Oh, really? The buildings aren't going to collapse? They got some of the colors wrong? What are you talking about? If it hits out there, it's going to be deadly. It's going to look like this. The end. Quit whining about the details. This is how it works. And, one more thing. There's a 9/11 legacy shot here. I wish I had a better way to put it. But there's the iconic image we all know of the buildings collapsing and the smoke and the dust.
Debris.
Flying through the streets, blocked only by the buildings and people running. And now we know what that looks like in real life because we've all seen it. That shot occurs in this film several times. And I don't recall seeing shots like that prior to 9/11. I don't think people had thought about it. I don't think we knew exactly what it looked like. And now we do. I'm not saying it doesn't belong in the film, but I'm saying there's always that echo you get.
Well, it adds to the realism.
It does, but is it worth doing in a picture like this? I think it's okay, but it's never far from your mind.
Well, that's it for this episode. Thanks for watching. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter to find out more or to ask us about your favorite films.
So until next time, that's my brother Todd.
And that's my brother Mike saying, Mein Führer, I can walk.